love your suit.
Hello, beautiful people. I'm Oliver Perrin, and welcome to A Safer Space. I will be speaking this afternoon with Mr. Tim Rudisil, coming to us from East Tennessee, and the subject of our discussion will be Donald Trump's meeting with Vladimir Putin in Helsinki. All the hysteria that has gone along with that, and perhaps some bit about peeking behind the curtain and attempting to determine what's really going on while everyone is out here paying attention to the quickly moving fingers of the prestidigitators. Mr. Tim, I believe, has any number of things that he'd like to cover in that respect, and in just a moment I will turn it over to him. I do want to remind you to stay subscribed to Semiagog, to subscribe to this channel, A Safer Space, which will work together with Semiagog as the one main channel and the other as its alternate until I get through this business with the content strikes against my channel. Be aware also that BitChute remains up and will always be a viable alternative. The content will continue to post there. Things are going to be crazy as we get in towards the midterm elections. It's just going to get stranger and stranger, and we may well get booted off of YouTube, despite the fact that we're attempting to make everything lovely and wonderful and warm and fuzzy and kind, with crying closets and teddy bears.
Little brown unicorns.
And little brown unicorns. So with that out of the way, Mr. Tim, thank you very much for speaking with us. What do you have for us today on the subject of this this meeting in Helsinki, the press conference, and all the pearl-clutching, hand-wringing, and ripping out of hair that has followed upon it?
Well, I think that all of it, and I do mean all of it, boils down very succinctly to a bunch of people who don't want to know what really went on, who don't really want to know anything at all about the summit that Trump held with Mr. Putin, and I don't really think they want to know about anything at all except what they can bitch about. And what they can bitch about is minuscule. Absolutely minuscule. You could tell this by looking at Putin. Putin was like in disbelief that the American press was going where it went with all of this. Now, I'm sorry, but I'm in agreement with Putin. You got to be joking. People come out and talk about Trump was treasonous. He was treasonous. He was this. He was that. He was. What the fuck are they talking about?
Yeah, it really does beggar belief, given all the things that we've seen in the past. You know, the many U.S. presidents who've gone over there. As I understand it, one of the, maybe it was Ted Kennedy, went over and was actually asking for assistance from the Russians in his own possible presidential campaign. You got stuff going on with people going over and, hugging and kissing Brezhnev, Andropov. I mean, all through the U.S. history.
Oh, hell, go on back to Khrushchev, man. Go on back to FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the great leader of the progressives at Malta.
Yeah, Yalta. Yeah, giving
Yalta. Yeah.
Giving half of Europe, to Stalin.
Yeah, knowing what was going to happen to that half of Europe.
Well, everything I've seen about FDR thus far shows that he's pretty much the best ally the communists ever had.
All we have to fear is fear itself. Yeah, well, I'm sorry, but I just don't see Trump as treasonous because Clapper and the other idiot.
Brennan, yes.
Yeah, right, the other idiot. And Schumer and all these people decide he is. I'm sorry, I just don't. I see it pretty much as reasonable. And I'm going to be honest with you. I go one further. if the intelligence agencies of the United States of America say the Russians engaged in trying to hack our elections, I would go, they tried to hack whose side of the elections? The Republicans? No, they didn't. The Democrats? Oh, yes, they did. Huh.
Well, I'm not even
Wonder
sure that
why.
they did. I mean, it's
Oh, they
kind
got
of,
33,000 emails out of Hillary.
there is nothing to establish that Hillary Clinton's emails were released by Russians. That goes back to the idea that
I
they
didn't
say
say
that
they were released by the Russians. I said they got them,
well,
along with certain other people,
possibly,
one of
but
which is unnamed, one of which countries is unnamed, that got these emails. Wonder what they did with them.
well, just in general, the idea of saying hacked the elections is a piece of,
Garbage.
nonsense, because you can't hack an election. What happened is they claim that the DNC servers were hacked, although there's been this stuff, about how the data transfer forensic information indicates that it probably went onto a thumb drive because the speed at which the data was transferred did not conform to the bandwidth available for doing it remotely. And then there is the business of John Podesta's email account being hacked, but we learned later that his password was password. So they say hacked the elections, but the reality is we're dealing with possible hacking of the DNC servers that have never been examined and were never turned over to the FBI, that were reviewed by CrowdStrike, and then that data was then passed on. Yes. Then we got Podesta's email account that was breached in some fashion, but was not secure in any way. And then we have the idea that they put, apparently, sometimes I hear hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes I hear a few million, to run some Facebook ads designed to agitate both Republicans and Democrats. So the entire thing is just, it's nonsense. It's bullshit.
It's all bullshit. Yes, all bullshit, Ollie. Which is why I say that Trump is not a traitor for saying that, so what? He doesn't believe it. I don't believe it. Who gives a fuck? They were unsuccessful.
Yeah, but why the fuck would somebody like Coates, the intelligence community figure that's now in charge of so much, what the hell is he doing coming out and trying to undermine Trump? And what the hell are these people doing releasing this
is he
equally
actually
ridiculous?
Trying to undermine Trump?
Well, by hammering on the idea that the Russians fucked with the elections, possibly. The only angle I can see on it is that they're going to set the stage and use their opponent's energy, Tai Chi style, to justify a whole raft of changes that will occur as midterms roll in, that will decentralize the elections.
Justify a raft of changes. You mean like having voter ID?
Yeah, and making sure it's decentralized and that there's a paper trail.
Oh, my goodness. You don't suppose this is to actually keep the Democrats
from engaging in their usual fraud? Yes.
Oh, okay. Now I think I understand it. Golly, I'm glad you explained that.
It was a possibility that did occur to me, yes.
Golly gee. Well, those Democrats are something, aren't they? They'll get in there and
sell you
just raise all kinds of hell and point all
tomorrow?
kinds of fingers. Yeah. Yeah. It's good that way, isn't it? Depends on where you set the pebble on the board, doesn't it? Go is such an instructive game if you pay attention to it. Because where you set the pebble on the board determines where you must set the next pebble. And Trump has got the next pebbles set out in Utah.
Mr. Huber. U.S. Attorney John Huber.
Yeah, and all those lovely little FBI agents out that way. I imagine they've been getting a lot of FBI agents out that way. They probably got more FBI agents now than they had when they started.
Nothing like that Utah Mormon white horse prophecy. Yes. which, as I mentioned, I went looking into after you pointed out to me that the Mormons have long had a prophecy that they'll save the United States, save the Constitution. Until looking into that, I didn't realize that, like, the U.S. Constitution is a religious document for Mormons. That's a part of the canon of things that they must have cognizance of as true believers.
Really? You mean that? Golly gee, Ollie. Gosh, that makes them super patriots, doesn't it? Yeah, sure does. I love it myself. I think it's marvelous, and I think we need a whole lot more of it.
And what do you think, other than the possibility of setting things up to more tightly corral the possibilities for fraud that the Democrats have available to them? What do you think beyond that that we should have been paying attention to relative to this whole summit, this whole interchange that everybody's missing? What other things? Now, we just did a video that should be posted by the time this one's up on what we called the what you called the three-legged stool, and the fact that these powers are coming together now as three with the U.S., China, and Russia. And very interestingly, I just saw a 50-minute interview done by someone at a UK newspaper in a radio program. You can find it online, with Steve Bannon. And Steve Bannon very explicitly called out the fact that the United States would now have to develop some kind of relationship with Russia as a way to close ranks against China. It kind of makes me pissed off that I had not...
Listen, do the Democrats want the ranks closed against China? I don't think so. Do you?
They
I mean,
sure as hell
really?
don't, because their pockets, their little larders are filled with goodies. But it does make me pissed off that I did not get that clip of yours up sooner, because you said it long before Bannon did. A week before Bannon did. Yes.
It doesn't matter.
I know, not to you, but it's good to get those out there.
Well, all right. We'll let you get these things out there if you like. I don't really care, Ollie. See, the thing is that to me, it's just a big go board. And I take delight in watching these peasants in the Democratic Party put their pebbles on the board, whereas the Democrats have nothing going for them. The Republicans have everything going for them. And I look to see a big red wave, I think they call it, in these latest elections that we're going to have, the midterms, because the Democrats are being fools. They're getting behind all the people they should not get behind, and they're not getting behind anybody with any sense. To put it bluntly, this little girl from New York, yeah,
yes, Democrat kids are cool thing.
Yeah, they really don't know what the fuck they're doing, on top of which half of them aren't registered to vote. So what the fuck good are they?
Well, it would seem that all they do is further the program of attempting to basically set it up so that we have sort of national socialists on one side and global socialists on the other, so that they can all pretend to be fighting with great sound and fury, whereas the common denominator that's really there is the idea that there should be socialism. But I think that they're not understanding what I hope is the case, which is that there is an entire flyover country of people who still go with the basic American ideas and are like, fuck this socialism shit.
Reminds me of a quote from an old English bard. Sound and fury, like a tale told by an idiot. Sound and fury signifying nothing. That's what I see now. Clapper and the rest have sound and fury. He's a traitor. He's treasonous. Schumer's talking about how he looks like a compromised president. He looks like this. He looks like that.
Compromise.
You know, yeah. like a tale told by an idiot, sound and fury signifying nothing. Fine. When they're done with the sound and the fury, and it has boiled down to signifying nothing, where then will they stand on that day, when that wind blows at them? Where? They won't have anywhere to stand. They won't have anything to hide behind. They are fools. They have sold out everything they accuse Trump of selling out for money.
And for decades, yeah.
Yeah, from China. They've gotten so used to being able to rack and ruin someone with public opinion that they are constantly in amazement they haven't been able to rack and ruin Trump.
Yeah, that it doesn't work anymore. All bets on that shit are off. And there are interesting little peeps and squeaks that I am hearing now about how Peter Strzok spent quite a bit of time in the Middle East, and in fact did some time there living in Iran, which is slowly coming to the surface. And we now have some reports that I haven't confirmed yet, but they're squeaking out yesterday and today about how Lisa Page is cooperating now and turning over some shit that may not fit well with the things Strzok has claimed.
You don't suppose that split tail is going to get up there and just piss all over poor old Strzok, do you?
Signs indicate that that may well be what has started to happen.
Yeah, the signs indicate it like a mad motherfucker, especially with the leaders of the Republicans saying, "Oh, she's really cooperating. She's such a lovely cooperative girl."
And now saying that she won't have to do a public appearance either.
Really? There'll be no public hearing on Miss Lisa Page. Oh, my goodness, no. Yeah, right.
But now they don't really have any ability to do anything other than ask questions and make referrals. So would you expect that this is, that her cooperation would have to go further? Perhaps even all the way to Salt Lake City?
Yeah, I think that she's probably going to be questioned by the FBI in Salt Lake City. I think she's probably going to be questioned by the fellow in charge out there of making recommendations to a grand jury. You know, just the local district attorney, not district attorney, what do you call his ass? AUSA, assistant U.S. attorney.
Yes, and a grand jury quite likely comprising a number of devout Mormons for whom the Constitution is a religious document. Not just the U.S. attorney, but also the grand jury that will, weigh in on how they feel about whether it should go forward.
Boy, I'll tell you, that's going to be some stuff there. Put the pebble right on this one little spot. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and so then watch the lines of power radiate. I'm sorry, do go ahead, Ollie.
Well, we zoomed in on this domestic situation, but zooming back out again, what else should we think about? I figure we got another 5 or 10 minutes. What do you think our viewers should know about this meeting with Putin? Other things that relate here. It would seem that there'd have to be something going down with Syria. I think Trump is probably going to be aiming for some sort of perceptible... One of the biggest things they came together on is how they're going to handle energy and energy policy with reference to China being the world's largest suck-up of all the energy there is in the universe, and with Putin's need to sell energy. Yeah, it struck me that, speaking of things that people didn't pay enough attention to when they happened, or applied the wrong context to, or let us say the secondary incidental context to. And in this case, I have in mind when Trump was heading over to talk to NATO and the Germans, and he mentioned that there's this shit going on with, excuse me, we have a helicopter going by. He mentioned that, it seems
Is
so
it black?
odd.
Is it black? I'm sorry.
I didn't look outside, but it must be.
It must be black.
It seemed rather strange that on his way over, he raises all this hell shortly before meeting Putin, about how NATO is supposed to be defending against Russia, but they're not paying their fair share, and they're, buying enormous amounts of energy, schlepping off billions of dollars to Russia, on this pipeline. He threw a bone totally to the Eastern Europeans, because what happened is the Russians went around Poland to deliver that to Germany. So nobody mentions that, but that was a huge bone to throw to Poland. And I'm sure it was recognized as, hell yeah, I'm glad an American president finally came and said, why did you basically cut Poland off at the knees? But more importantly, it rang that little bell before he met Putin about, given the fact that the United States is now producing so much energy and wants to export it, that different arrangements could be made. So everybody was talking about how it was a slap in the face to Merkel, our allies. But it was much more a slap in anticipation of meeting Putin to signal that there were other things he could do if they couldn't work things out nicely. So back to your point about energy, I just wanted to add that in because it shaped it, or fit in with it.
It makes you sort of wonder about what's going to happen with Iran and Iran's energy now that it's going to be cut off from China, because it's going to be cut off. And what's going to happen with all that Russian energy? My goodness. You don't suppose that Russia could be getting ready to really provide China with a lot of energy in anticipation of being able to twist the nozzle on that energy if it wants to.
As the Eastern Europeans have learned about. And in that same interview with Steve Bannon, he was very much calling out this little triangle he mentioned of Turkey, Iran, and China, and how they had to be dealt with as a set. So given the fact that Turkey is only able to continue to thumb its nose in certain ways because of, one, extortion, exploitation of the situation vis-a-vis refugees and Europe, but more importantly, it can only do this in the face of the U.S. because it believes that it has Russian backing. And as we've seen in the past,
they may not have Russian backing much longer.
Yes.
Yeah. Huh. Golly gee. You don't suppose that has something to do with Syria, do you? Huh. Maybe the Russians got a little tired of Turkey trying to edge in.
And maybe Trump is willing to go ahead and formally or informally, but in any case meaningfully, de facto, recognizing that Russia is going to stay in Syria. Because if Russia does stay in Syria, then they get to play games with all that offshore energy stuff that you have pointed out is likely to be happening in Cyprus.
My goodness, my gracious.
Super tankers. In which case, Turkey would be something that Russia would just need to pat on the head and say, shut up now.
Yeah, be quiet now. Yeah. Of course, there's always the consideration of the stuff that Israel's discovered off the coast of Israel and Lebanon. Lots of oil. Ollie, there's so much oil you wouldn't believe all the oil there is.
Yeah, as you've said many, many times for literally for 25 or 30 years, that this peak oil shit is total nonsense.
It's not total nonsense, old son. It makes a lovely pebble to put on the board.
Yes, a pebble of disinformation to shift and shape energy policy for decades, but now the time has come to dispense with it.
Well, then we shall have to remove that pebble from the board or let it be surrounded and become a dead zone. Oh, well.
Indeed.
I wonder, sometimes, deep in the night, what Vladimir Putin thinks of Donald Trump. He must be in absolute fucking fear of Trump and what Trump can bring to bear on the board at this moment.
You think so?
Oh, Christ, yes.
I think we haven't even begun to see what effect Trump's still relatively insignificant moves with tariffs and trade war stuff are going to have on China and Europe. I mean, China's economy there's a reason why China and India have been socking away gold.
Mm-hmm.
attempting to insulate themselves from this. But it's now beginning to happen. The Chinese can't
Mm-hmm.
hide it in their figures anymore.
Mm-mm.
And he's on a global
Nope.
offensive right now, a major global
Yes,
offensive,
he
and
is.
global,
Mm-hmm.
all at once.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yep.
back to Putin and Trump. I'm sorry.
Well, that's just what Putin keeps wondering about. Where does Trump stop? Oi! Because Putin, like everybody else, is used to either charging ahead or being with the diplomatic corps. And Trump is with neither.
And does
Trump's
both
not
at the
charging
same
ahead.
time.
Yeah, sure. Oh,
Yeah.
Trump plays the puppets of charging ahead and with the diplomatic corps and all that. It's like this nonsense with the intelligence agencies. All of that boils down to one thing. He's got to get his people in place, and he's got to clean out a bunch of these assholes that are in positions of multi multi God, I don't even know the name for it. I don't think there is one really. Where you go through different presidents, right? Multi-presidential authority, because that's what they have. The politicians come and go, the bureaucrats stay. And these bureaucrats have gotten real sure of themselves. And once Trump gets everybody in positions, there's going to be a bunch of bureaucrats resigning and retiring.
Or rolling out in a tumbril. Yeah.
I love a tumbril. Tumbrils are so lovely. The only two-wheeled reading cart I know of.
Danton et fille. Well, then, with the few minutes remaining to us, how would you summarize this business of Trump, Putin, and the media hysteria that is dependent upon these surface distractions?
Well, I think they're very much dependent on uh, surface responses. They remind me very much of somebody watching uh, the the waves created by a great white shark coming at them. They don't see the great white shark. All they see are the ripples. And they don't really realize they're about to be on the menu of the great white shark, or in this case, the great white Trump.